Hello and welcome to episode 6 of BD TV. You're one of hundreds of people globally who have joined today to hear from one of your peers as a senior member of the BD and marketing community in a professional firm. It's in some ways it's the same format as previous weeks, but we've also something fresh and different this week. So we'll start off. I'll introduce our speaker in a moment, and we'll have a discussion for around 10 minutes. But then we've got a fresh personality and perspective coming in for the Q&A. We're going to bring in Shelley Snelson of Flexology to ask a few questions at that stage. So I think you've suffered long enough with me running the whole thing. I hope this is a welcome change for you today. So just one final point of for privacy as well, to remind you, this is all being recorded and will be available on the BD Consultancy YouTube channel afterwards. So just so you know, any questions you might ask through the Q&A at the foot of the screen may become in the public domain. I'm joined today by Dominic de Mariveles. Dominic I've known for 15 years as a colleague, a client, and as a friend. Unlike the other Dominic who's been in the press over the last couple of weeks, I'm reassured that Dominic is staying firmly at his home in Kent for this today, and he's put the backdrop in so we can't quite tell, but I'm reassured he has not left to test his eyesight. Dominic is the Global BD Director for Crestbridge. It's a leading administration, management, corporate governance business, 300 people in 6 jurisdictions around the world: London, Jersey, Luxembourg, Bahrain, New York, and Cayman. He's studied in the UK and US and has had senior BD positions with some of the world's leading technology, accountancy, and law firms. And as I said, I know Dom very well. He's a natural relationship builder and connector, always ready to challenge received wisdom with a fresh and well-informed position. And he's very often right when he does so. So, Dominic, I hope we get a little bit of that today. The first thing I'd like to ask you is, I know from the history of Crestbridge and from working with you in recent months, you're really, really strong in terms of real estate. Does that cause concern as we try and navigate COVID, that real estate exposure?
Peter, yes. I mean, I think ultimately it does. I mean, where we're lucky at Crestbridge, being an administration firm, is that we do long-term work, we do the structures, and we do the accounting and reporting on structures for institutions globally, and those needs are there. You have to do the accounting, you have to do your end of year accounts, you have to do your reporting. This doesn't go away even under times of financial duress. So on that sense, we're very lucky, but obviously there is a transaction side to the business, and real estate transactions have declined somewhat. So we've seen a little bit of a decline, but overall we're in a pretty good space, and it's also been balanced out on our side by having private equity and real estate as our core sectors. And the private equity space traditionally does very well during recessionary times. That's the time when private equity people think that they're going to get good bargains in the market. And so what we've seen is that a rise in funds being set up, structures being set up to look at opportunities for distressed debt going forward.
Yes. So there's some opportunity there, undoubtedly. But I'm concerned, as I'm sure other businesses are, that when we got the end of the last quarter, end of March, we only really had 1 or 2 weeks of the results being affected by COVID and by lockdown. When we get to the end of this month and the next rent payments are due and the results, the corporate results are released in July, how do you think that's going to impact the market?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. We're trying to come to a house view on this, but it's a very interesting question, Peter. So you're quite right there. At the end of the last quarter, where there was only 2 weeks worth of rental payments in the UK, rents generally tend to be paid on a quarterly basis. So by the end of March, you only really had lockdown for 2 weeks, social distancing for a week or two before. Most companies paid their rents. You know, there was some non-payment to some of the larger real estate companies in the UK, for example. But it wasn't on the scale that could be imagined. This time round, at the end of June, we've had 3 full months of lockdown. Plenty of businesses have been completely on furlough and have most of their staff on furlough. Are they really going to make those payments? We will see. There's some optimism in the market, and I guess the government stepping in, not just in the UK, but in France, Germany, the US as well. The government stepping in with all these support schemes will soften the blow a little bit. But yeah, there is a big risk at the end of the month that creates a situation of some uncertainty. And I mean, together with that, we look at the markets today. I've been looking at the markets over the past few weeks. I mean, today the FTSE's down at about 6,400. It's only 1,000 points off where it was in January before the whole crisis started. So that shows there's a very bullish sentiment in the market at the moment, and we'll have to see whether that really survives. The other thing that's going to happen at the end of this month is the quarterly GDP statistics are going to come out across Europe and across the world for national economies. Plenty of economists in the UK suggest that we'll see a quarterly dip of anything from 15 to 20% of GDP in the UK, and that will be similarly reflected across Europe. That's going to affect market sentiment as those come out day by day, and people realise the damage that's really been caused to the real economy. And finally, of course, banks will then tend to look at their loan books. Will organisations that breach their covenants start to breach their covenants as payments don't get made, or as companies look to lay off from the furlough scheme and not take back on those staff that have been furloughed. So it's a risky time. There's a lot of optimism at the moment because it does look like the virus is receding, which has cheered everyone up no end. So particularly in the southeast of England at the moment. So there is this optimism, and I really hope it can stay in place. But we will see. Certainly, I think end of June, early July, there'll be a much stronger verdict in the market about whether we get this V shape, which is what everyone has their fingers crossed for, and frankly everyone hopes for, or whether actually that's too optimistic and we end up with some kind of L or U-shaped serious recession hitting us. So it's the next couple of weeks will be an interesting time to see what happens at the end of this month.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you've always been optimistic about London's role in the global financial economy, and that's always been an area of interest from you right back from your days of studying international relations and economics and politics. And I'm about to put a poll to everyone who's attending today. I'll just launch it, and then I'm going to ask you to reflect on the answers, sure. if you're willing. Thanks, Tom. So the poll is going to ask, and you'll see it popping up on your screen in a moment. Over the next 2 years, which area is most likely to strengthen its position as a financial hub? So we're obviously thinking now about we're thinking about COVID. We're thinking about how well the different jurisdictions have and different areas of the world have navigated the crisis. Of course, this year we've also got Brexit and the likelihood of a hard Brexit. But this is built upon all the obvious benefits which the UK has had over the years and enjoyed. What I want to know is what the people listening to this live, I'm sorry if you're not able to do this through YouTube, but I'll share the results with you, is to indicate, do you think the UK, the US, Southeast Asia, continental Europe will prosper most as a result of what we're going through at the moment? Or indeed, is financial power going to be more globally dispersed generally? So I'll just give a moment now. I can see the everyone selecting their options as we speak, and it's very close. Okay, over 3/4 have voted, which I think is pretty good, but in any poll. So let me end that now and share the results with you. So what I'm seeing, Dominic, is that there's one slight winner. Can you see that in front of you?
Yeah.
That people are saying 41% of those who've responded in the last 2 minutes have said generally they think it's going to be more dispersed. If they had to choose one region which is going to strengthen its position as a result of this, it's Southeast Asia, followed by continental Europe, then the UK, and right in last place the US. Dominic, can you understand the sentiment that lies behind that, and is that your view?
Yeah, I can certainly understand the sentiment. I think the long-term trend has been with GDP of the world spreading more to Asia. and rebalancing towards the east, that Asia has been growing as a financial centre for decades now in importance, and perhaps people see that this will continue in the current environment, particularly if the COVID crisis is resolved faster in Asia than it is in Europe, due to the fact it started a little bit earlier. And obviously people are saying it's dispersed as well, which there's some piece to that. Slightly contrarian from me, I think. I think the UK will do very well, actually, over the next couple of years in terms of a relative performance. I think that particularly in the business that I'm in, which is the fund sector, there's been a huge growth in Luxembourg, fabulous growth in Luxembourg, been a very, very successful jurisdiction. But finding the talent, finding the resources to really continue that growth, I think will prove a real challenge. I think that's similar for Paris and Frankfurt, frankly. Also, you've got the UK legal system as a strong backbone in the global economy. Most financial documents that are written, or the law firm people watching this will know full well, they all tend to be done in English law or US law if they possibly can. And also the pound is likely to be very weak, and actually with a weak pound that gives a big advantage to workers in the UK and to talent in the UK. So I think with our deep pool of talent, which is very deep compared to many of the other jurisdictions, particularly across Europe, I think the UK will come out pretty well, even with the disruption of a hard Brexit. In the medium term, we'll do quite well.
Okay, thanks, Dom. So not necessarily a straight line, of course, but you think some of the fundamentals are in place there.
Yeah, strong for us.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks very much for sharing what I know is a very well researched and evidenced background to that view. If we may now just dive straight down from that macro global view to the specifics of what you're doing as a group BD director now at Crestbridge to actually drive activity and drive relationships. Are there, conscious of time, are there 2 or 3 things you're doing to try and keep that tempo ticking along and make sure you're engaging with the right people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're building our sales resources strongly, actually, which is a departure for the firm to be heavily focused on building pure sales resources. But we think that we need to do that to really take market share and to grow in a challenging market. So that's one thing that we're doing. Another piece is looking at software for marketing automation and for RFPs and proposals. And again, in normal times, these are the sorts of things that you want to do. They sound like good and nice to have projects, but they are a little bit nice to have, and they're getting in the way of all the work that you're currently doing. But now that we've all been working at home and working at a slightly different pace, with slightly different agendas, now's the time to do that. If we're going to realise benefits of automation and digitalisation, then now's the time for us to really try and implement some of these products, get using them, and start to reap the benefits of efficiency. So investing into the marketing automation is a big focus for us at the moment. And then finally, I'd say, not finally, two things that are very aligned is clearly our only real route to market at the moment is social media. LinkedIn is a huge chunk of that. Either you're phoning people directly because you know them already, but for people you don't know already directly, there's not really that many channels to market. You can do email communications and things like that, but you certainly can't go and see anybody. And lockdowns in 135 countries in the world, so this is a global issue. So we're spending a huge amount more on social, and we're really trying to focus our efforts on social, in particularly down some channels. So there's our current clients, our potential new business clients, but also our intermediaries. At Crestbridge, we go to work really through our intermediaries, law firms, and that is law firms and accountancy firms in the main, but mainly law firms. And so staying in touch with them, making sure that we're looking at their webinars, that we're working with them on webinars, they're working with us, for example, and that we're really trying to jointly grow our brands, jointly grow our market share, introduce clients to one another in these difficult times. Law firms will have a tough time with the lack of transactions. We understand that, and that's really what we're trying to do. So it's about trying to maintain relationships, but also grow new ones. I think if we just maintain relationships, this situation that we're in, particularly in professional services, may last some time to come. So we have to be able to continue to grow the business now, even though we're in a very different circumstances to that which we normally find ourselves in
Yes.
of any given year.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I'm, you know, as someone who runs a business development consultancy, I'm always pleased to hear that much more proactive view. And it's something over the last 2 weeks, certainly we've got a sense of other firms are now sitting up and saying this could be 6 to 9 months before there's any return to any new normal. We've got to get much more active in this and engage with others to help. So that's really good to see. Dominic, I'm going to hand over now to Shelley Snelson. Now, Shelley is a friend of the BD consultancy who has had a number of senior positions in accountancy and finance and investment before setting up her own agency called Flexology 3 years ago, which focuses around this very, very topical issue of flexibility in the workforce. And Shelley, lovely to have a fresh personality and a fresh perspective to run the Q&A. May I please pass across to you to ask Dominic two or three questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Hi, Dom. Hi. I wonder if we could chat a little bit about more about working life at Crestbridge. And perhaps we could start with chatting about how working arrangements have changed during the working restrictions, and then perhaps also how attitudes to remote and flexible working have changed during that time as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just to give a bit of background on what we did, I think we went into stopped working in our offices prior to lockdown, about a week prior to lockdown. Being a professional services business, we've got 300 people across 7 offices. So we've always been a business that has a lot of international management, a lot of remote team management anyway. It's the nature of the business that we had. So we already had, you know, I'm sad to say really that I already did loads of Zoom calls before the lockdown, whereas lots of people are saying they have Zoomitis now and now they're getting a bit bored of Zoom. I'm like, well, welcome to my world. We've had Zoom here for a long time and actually did a super job. I give credit to our IT and operational team. Everyone moved to work from home. We used our offsite BCP for a little while. That was all very effective, and everyone's really been more or less happily within reason working from home for the past sort of 12 weeks now, which is quite a long time. So it's been a big shift, but relatively painless, which is a pleasant surprise, I must say. A pleasant surprise that it was like that.
That's great. I mean, that's really positive to hear. And I guess given that it's been so painless and a positive experience for you, do you think that in the future, when office life resumes, that you will be more flexible and have more of a mix of remote working and flexible working, or is that still uncertain?
No, I think that will definitely be the case. There's a little bit of uncertainty at the moment, and we have some internal surveys going on at the moment to see what people's attitudes are about this that we're trying to collate. Because there are a significant amount of people who can't wait to come back to the office and come back to work and are quite fed up with being at home, and that's completely understandable. And there are others less so. So we have to kind of gauge gauge that. But from a management perspective and a business perspective, we have been able to do a large amount of work with a big amount of the staff working from home, and that will definitely impact our strategy going forward in terms of how much new office space we may take going forward, how much office space we think we need. And certainly if we're looking to say do recruitment, we'll be thinking about, do people have to come and work full time? Because certainly it would open up the talent pool if we can have people who can work full time in the office or not full time in the office, but part time from home and part time in the office, and potentially work from locations that were much further away from our offices, for example. So we might be able to utilize that to our benefit. And frankly, if we don't, I'm sure this is what every other company is thinking of. So if we don't, everybody else will. So we'll probably be forced into it by market forces in the war for talent.
That's great. I mean, it's great to hear that you're considering all of this now, because it means you'll be ahead of the curve when life moves back to the office in considering flexible working and remote working. So that's brilliant. And I guess it would be good to hear, I mean, you've talked about the positive side of things and how it's been relatively painless, but I'm sure there have been some challenges that you've overcome with your teams over the last kind of 3 or 4 months. It would be beneficial for others to hear about, so kind of what the challenges have been and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of it goes around childcare is probably the largest one. Obviously, there's lots of different issues, but childcare is probably the largest issue. And some people have really struggled with that. Schools being closed, family members maybe not able to come and provide childcare in the way that they have been previously, or other types of childcare available. And we've tried to be as flexible as we can there. We found that people have maybe been looking at the day in 3 sections. So having either the morning off and then working in the afternoon and sometime in the evening, or working in the morning and the evening and not so much in the afternoon, to try and give them that balance so that they could perform their duties, get their roles done, but at the same time have some family time available where they're able to do those childcare and attend to their children. So we tried to be as flexible as we can, and I think I think we've got a pretty happy ship. So we must have done something right.
That sounds brilliant, and it's great that you've kind of recognised this imbalance that's there. We did a survey, actually a remote working survey at the start of the working restrictions. We found 1 in 4 people really struggling with this balance of childcare and working. So it's been a real issue, I think, for a lot of businesses, and it's brilliant that you've found a solution to that that's worked for your teams. I guess it would be interesting just to ask you a couple of questions, if I may. The first would be about you personally. What has been your biggest learning from the last 4 months?
I think it's probably around that, actually. I was really nervous. I'm a salesperson by default, effectively, and I often spend my life traveling the world, trying to flog products for my company around the world to various different people. And that's what I do. And I go to a lot of events and trade shows and other offices and see law firms all over the world. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to go and work from home. That is going to be a big challenge to continue that level of engagement remotely. But I guess one of the blessings is that it's not really a blessing, but it has affected all countries around the world and all jurisdictions. So lots and lots of people are in the same boat as me. And so actually we have been able to continue those interactions, and I've been able to sort of fulfill my role much more effective than I feared that I would, actually. So one of my biggest learnings is, gosh, this is possible, and maybe I'll be able to temper my CFO at some point and suggest we reduce the travel budget a bit. I'm sure he'll be pleased at that if I suggest that to him.
That sounds like a popular suggestion, yes. And the last thing, what's the thing you've missed the most in the last 4 months?
So I do miss going to London. So you probably can't tell today, but I suffer with hay fever terribly, and I live out in Kent. And of course, normally I'm at work in London, and all that nice heavy pollution in London means that I don't sneeze or cough or anything or feel any side effects. But now I'm actually stuck at home. I'm streaming and sneezing the entire time with hay fever. So I need to get back to a nice polluted city so that I stop sneezing and coughing everywhere.
That's interesting. Probably the opposite of what most people would like, but it makes sense for you.
I'm always a little bit contrarian.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dominic. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Please join next week at 2 o'clock, where you'll hear from KPMG.